glucagon-like peptide 1. How it can be completed without dysbiosis, because we do know that weight mesh controls would have different microbiota as compared to people with NASH. So these endotoxins or these PAMs, the pathogen-associated molecular patterns, are transported to the liver, and they would not even lead to the accumulations of fat in the hepatocyte, but would also activate Kupffer cells, which would lead to the more insulin resistance here, and at the same time would also activate hepatic stellates, which would produce and activate the fibrosis. And this fibrosis links liver injury to cirrhosis and its complications, and occurs via activation of hepatic stellate cells. And that's how it occurs, that apoptotic bodies are being engulfed not only by macrophages but also by hepatocytes, which will stimulate the TGF-beta. And this TGF-beta is the main cytokine in fibrosis and would increase the hepatic stellate and collagen type 1. It would also lead to hepatocytes stimulation and would increase the lipid accumulation further. So this cascade goes on and on. So in summary, the pathophysiology of NASH is complex, multifactorial, probably not yet understood fully. However, obesity, insulin resistance, poor nutrition, or to be very specific, malnutrition or disproportionate body composition, lipotoxicity is in a genetically susceptible host leads to NASH. NASH can occur in lean subjects, so it's basically your body composition which is more important. And the therapies are still being evaluated, and I'm sure Dr. Bilal will enlighten on that. This is my last slide, and I will read it for you. Hunger is the first element of self-discipline. And if you can control what you eat and drink, you can control everything else. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleh, describing this complex subject in such a nice way. Now, I request Dr. Bilal Hamid, who is a now familiar face to everyone, to present future therapies for NASH.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I think it's the last talk of the session, and I'm not gonna take that much time, but I wanted to have a show of hands. So how many of you went to the gym, went to do exercise this morning? One. What about the breakfast and apparatus and halwa puri? No. Yay. Okay. So the topic which I was given is the future therapies for NASH, and it's an excellent segue from the pathophysiology which Dr. Saleh has amazingly mentioned. So before we talk about the actual drug development and where we are, and I wanted to simplify, but because it's a complicated topic, I have to show you data, but I try to tell you what the future looks like. So if you look at the management options, what we have available right now, the first thing is control of obesity. And no matter what we talk about, the lifestyle change will not go anywhere. So diet, exercise, and if someone really are overweight and obese and have risk factors, we talk about bariatric surgery. One of the most common reasons patients with fatty liver disease die is cardiovascular risk factors. So we need to treat the metabolic syndrome. It's hypertension, hyperlipidemia, and type 2 diabetes. There is some upcoming data about reducing the risk of HCC with metformin and simvastatin, but it's early data. And then there are only 1/3 of the patients which we know will be at risk of which we need medication, which we call targeting NASH or liver-specific treatment. And I'm going to talk about what we have available and what the outlook looks like in the future. But let me tell you one thing, although I was giving the task of talking about medication, but obesity and insulin resistance is the only viable public health option and solution. We can talk about as much because the problem is so huge, because in the US, we all are focusing upon finding a new medication, and once the new medication will approve, everyone will want that new medication and will forget about the basics. So this is my disclaimer that I still believe, especially countries like Pakistan, the prevention of this condition, the obesity and insulin resistance, is the best and the most important option. Believe me, every day I get messages now from Pakistan with patients with fatty liver disease and family members and friends. It is a real problem and we all are seeing it now. So we all know about the drug therapy, and we all know that right now there is no FDA approved therapy for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. But before we talk about the medication, which patient actually will need treatment, right? And then right now what we think about patients who have active inflammation, which we call NASH, NASH with fibrosis, or NASH which led to the cirrhosis. But patients who would not need treatment or medication treatment or drug treatment, who just have fatty liver, meaning just have steatosis, at least in America, we are all based on the Bivens trial, that we want patients who have biopsy proven NASH to be only the one who treat it, but it may change with non-invasive marker and some other ways. So it's a little bit complicated. I tried to make it a little bit simple. So how we think about it, and Dr. Saleh has beautifully mentioned it, that how we think about the pathophysiological processes and where the drug development is. So we have a normal liver, then we have patients who have steatosis, then we have steatohepatitis, and then ultimately lead to cirrhosis. So we have these 5 pathways we think about. One is that we need target that can work on insulin resistance and lipid metabolism. That's the first thing, or that is one of the first effects that happen. And then once you already have steatosis, that fat is then causing this lipotoxicity and oxidative stress. So we have target that can work on that pathway. The next is inflammation, and then this fat is now there, and some patients are going to get inflammation and immune activation. And then ultimately it leads to cell death, so there are medication with apoptosis and necrosis. And finally, this leads to this fibrogenesis and collagen turnover, which lead to cirrhosis of the liver. So we have now drugs in almost all these 5 categories. And just to give you an idea, there are around 300 compounds that in fatty liver disease that people are talking about. They're in different phases in clinical trial. But now it makes you a little bit it may be hard to read about, but this is just some of the pathways that, and the drugs that are in clinical trial. So we have almost every pathway is being directed or acted on that, this may be the pathway we wanted to focus on. One thing I wanted to mention it, so far the studies which led to the target to cell death and apoptosis and the fibrosis, they have been negative so far. So I won't have time to show you that data, but on the left 3 areas, which is the insulin resistance, lipotoxicity, and inflammation, we have very potential ways that we will talk about. So what we have right now available, we have right now, as of today, we have medications that we target insulin resistance. So the metformin was the first medication, everyone wants to use it because of its effect, but multiple studies have not shown any significant effect in patients who are not had diabetes, and so it's not recommended by societies. Pioglitazone is a very interesting drug. It's a PPR gamma agonist, and there were multiple trials have been done, and they may be used in patients. So I use it in patients who have type 2 diabetes, one of the options if they are not overweight or obese. The GLP-1 analog, liraglutide, which has been studies also have shown improvement. I'm a big believer of GLP-1, so if it's available, I have patients, I would recommend the patients to be on it. And then oxidative stress, so vitamin E, one of our biggest trial that we did, which has shown improvement. So it's been recommended as in patient in non-diabetic to be one of the options. So this was based on the Bivens trial, which was pioglitazone versus vitamin E, which showed that there was a histological improvement in NASH. So in this trial, the end point was that there is a decrease in the NASH score with decrease in the ballooning. They were 96 weeks trial, and if you can see that vitamin E had an improvement in 43% as compared to placebo, which is statistically significant. And based on this, that we have been. Interestingly, there was a paper published last year because this was done in non-diabetic. So we have other studies that show that it's safe in diabetic, but there was a paper from Dr. Chalasani group in Indiana which shows that they had it's a retrospective study that patients who were on vitamin E, they were cirrhotic patients versus who were not on vitamin E, Patients who are on vitamin E, they have a decreased risk of decompensation and decreased need for transplantation. So vitamin E again is coming back. The problem is that this is just a supplement. There is no company that has vitamin E and it's not being studied. And in the end, I'll show you the response of all the new medication where vitamin E stand. I still believe that it's a very good option and it may still be the part of the future. Pioglitazone, there was an excellent clinical trial of pioglitazone double-blind study of 101 patients which clearly